I was on Aperture, the assistance app for the blind, when a call came in. On the screen, a young woman, her eyes closed, asked me to check the expiration date on a medicine bottle. My gaze froze on the label. I whispered to her, "Don't take it. Someone's trying to harm you." It had been 2 months since I'd registered as a volunteer on Aperture. After that, the app had gone quiet, like it was in a deep sleep. That was totally normal. There were usually more volunteers than blind people on these platforms, so getting a call was actually a rare event. When the help bell suddenly rang, I even felt a little thrill. I connected immediately. On the screen was a girl, maybe 17 or 18, with a gentle, serene face and delicate features. If she could open her eyes, her gaze would surely be as warm as a spring breeze. But her eyes were tightly shut. Her voice was soft as she asked if I could help her read the expiration date on a medicine bottle. That gentle sound brought me back to the present. I picked up the bottle and brought it close to the camera. My eyes instantly recognized fluoxetine. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "You have depression." I instantly regretted the breach of etiquette. She just nodded faintly. I didn't push it, checking the expiration date. "Plenty of time left," I said. "Thank you," she replied. "There's another bottle." The next second, she fumbled and handed over a second bottle. I squinted, examining it carefully, and my chest seized up. "Do you know what this medicine is?" I probed cautiously. She hesitated, as if recalling something. "It should be olanzapine, I think. I once dated a psychologist, so I knew severe depression was often treated with fluoxetine combined with olanzapine. But the label on this bottle screamed, phenytoin sodium. My voice rose without my permission. "This isn't olanzapine. It's an epilepsy drug, and you absolutely cannot take it with fluoxetine." I warned her repeatedly that mixing the two drugs would lead to poisoning, possibly even death. The screen went silent for a long moment before her soft voice returned. "Really? I can't take it." I gritted my teeth. "Don't you dare. Someone is trying to harm you." Hanging up, her image still swam in my mind. For a stranger volunteer, I'd done everything I could. The rest was up to her. But then, the very next day, Aperture rang again. It was her. Her request made me freeze. "Can we meet?" "Meeting strange men isn't a good idea," I reminded her. She gave a bitter laugh. "For me, relatives and friends are more dangerous. Maybe a stranger would be safer. By the way, my name is Rowan Harrow, not young woman." I looked at her on the video call. "Rowan Harrow, it's a pleasure. My name is Caleb Cross. If I agree to meet, what do you want to do?" "I want to ask for your help," she said. "You can be compensated." Honestly, her appearance was part of why I agreed. It's hard to refuse a 17 or 18-year-old girl with clear, unseeing eyes asking for help. When we met at the coffee shop, she was even more beautiful than in the video. I had expected her to ask me to be a witness for a police report, or even to help her find the person who was harming her. What I didn't expect was for her to sit down and say something that made my heart pound. "Mr. Cross, I want to ask you to marry me." I froze for a few seconds. "First meeting and you?" She cut me off. "Third time. Fine if you count the 2 video calls." "But that's still so little," I mused. "Yes or no?" she pressed. I fell silent. She frowned. "Is it because I'm blind?" I quickly denied it. "No, that's not the point. The point is, we don't know each other." She sighed. "Didn't I tell you, strangers are the safest?" I couldn't help but ask. "Because strangers have no vested interest in me?" Then, she tilted her head slightly, her breathing light, as if trying to lift a rock that had been pressing on her heart for years. Rowan Harrow began to tell her story. She said her surname was Harrow, her mother's name, because she had been fatherless since birth. 3 years ago, her mother, Iris Harrow, died, leaving her completely alone. She had always just been a girl who couldn't see, but her mother left a huge sum of money, and from then on, she became the rich blind girl. Money, in her view, was a curse. When she was 16, relatives swarmed her, desperate to become her guardian. She knew in her heart it wasn't concern, but innate greed, wanting to devour her, family less fortune. The arguments hung over her like a toxic fog, her spirit sinking day by day until she developed severe depression. She even walked to the window several times, her toes hovering over the edge. Once, it was her cousin who desperately pulled her back from the brink. Her cousin was the only one among that greedy bunch who was kind to her. When she was little and couldn't see, he would read storybooks to her, page by page, right by her ear. She loved his tabby cat, but the cat was wild as the wind, bolting out the door with a single brush. So every time he visited, he'd carry a woven bag, searching the yard just so she could feel its warm fur. It was her cousin who told her that at 16, with financial independence, she legally didn't need a guardian anymore. Only then did the scheming relatives reluctantly retreat from the battle. But her cousin stayed, taking care of her just like when she was a child. In the days after her mother passed, she truly didn't know if she could have survived without him. She stopped studying after high school. Her cousin always encouraged her to try university, to at least get out and see the world. but she was inherently insecure, and with her depression, she rarely left the house. Then, when she turned 18, the atmosphere around them shifted. Her cousin was still kind, but his kindness now held a strange undertone. He would accidentally touch her, and his breathing would quicken when he looked at her. Blind people are sensitive to changes in the air. Even without seeing, she could feel the unease that permeated their private moments. She started avoiding him, but he sensed the sadness in her mood. Still, he was her cousin. Even if his feelings had changed, both human decency and the law forbade it. And she felt only kinship and gratitude for him, nothing more. 2 months ago, he confessed his feelings in a rush of emotion, and she immediately refused. She could hear the pain in his voice but was powerless to change it. Fortunately, after a few days of silence, he returned to his old self, as if nothing had happened, making her laugh and staying by her side. She felt relieved, believing things could continue as they were. However, after that, her body started acting strangely. The fluoxetine and olanzapine the doctor prescribed had improved her mood, but soon after, her spirits plummeted frequently, accompanied by chest tightness and headaches. It was then, on that day, that she made the call to me for help. She suspected her medicine had been switched, and she was right. Rowan Harrow finished her story, and I remained silent for a long time. So, you suspect the person who switched the olanzapine for phenytoin is your cousin? She nodded faintly. Besides the doctor, her cousin was the only one who could access her medicine bottles. But I was still puzzled. Even if it's love turned to hate, he wouldn't go to such extremes, would he? She whispered, maybe it's for the money. If it's about money, would you refuse him? I asked. After all, you said he was the only relative who was kind to you. She pondered. He wants all of it. Only then did I grasp her meaning. But if you die, your cousin isn't in the line of succession for your inheritance. Legally, the first in line are spouses, children, parents, followed by siblings, then grandparents. And you have none of those. This means that if you pass, the money would likely go to the state for public welfare, not to your cousin. Exactly. Generally, he wouldn't get it. But my situation is different. If the court rules that his 3 years of care count as actual guardianship and care, he has a chance to claim that inheritance. I remember a similar case. Rowan Harrow's face looked as if a heavy weight had been placed upon it. Finally, she let out a long sigh. So, he has a motive. I stared at her face for a moment. This girl, right in front of me, was far from the weak, harmless little rabbit she appeared to be. The realization hit me suddenly. You're proposing marriage to me to make your cousin give up, right? If you're married, your spouse immediately becomes the first in line heir. Then maybe your cousin would completely lose hope, and your relationship could go back to being purely familial. I couldn't help but half joke. So this is securing the crown prince. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said calmly, of course it's just a fake marriage. You marry me for 5 years, and I'll pay you $1 million each year. This contractual relationship sounded like something out of a romantic drama, but it was cold, devoid of any sweetness. There's actually a simpler way, I suggested. Make a will, clearly stating to your cousin that even if something happened to you suddenly, not a single penny would go to him. I think that would make him back off. But Rowan Harrow just paused, then said softly, I don't want to lose him, so I can't completely sever ties. I picked up the untouched coffee and took a sip. Why me? I wanted a stranger, anyone would do, she explained. I don't even care if you're a bad person, because we'll sign a contract. And I'll make a will in advance as a precaution. But I figured, since you volunteer for a blind assistance app, even if you're a bad person, you can't beat that bad. You don't even know my age or what I look like. I reminded her. It's fake anyway, she said, her tone indifferent. Besides, does it matter what you look like? I looked at her sightless eyes and gave a wry smile. No, it really didn't matter to her. A bit of a shame, actually. I'm quite good looking. I'm 34. I know, she replied, her expression unwavering. But you were 16 3 years ago. I continued. So you're only 19 now, not even legal marriage age. She thought for a moment. Then, let's be engaged first. The compensation will still be paid. I agreed to Rowan Harrow's charade not entirely because of her beauty. It was mostly for the money. I liked money. I just never expected that this decision would, little by little, drag me into the abyss. The contract was barely signed, but by afternoon a cool $500,000 hit my account. A little rich girl indeed. My first task, meet her cousin. I couldn't help but wonder what he'd do. Seeing a man 15 years his senior, suddenly slated to become his little cousin's future husband. A tiny thrill, laced with a familiar tension, ran through me. Her house reeked of old money, just as I'd expected. The cousin's handshake was a vise, almost crushing my right hand. Sitting down, his eyes, like dull knives, pinned me. He was a lion whose territory had been invaded. Rowan, though blind, clearly sensed the confrontation thickening the air. I don't agree, Liam Ford declared, his eyes flashing cold. Cousin, I'm an adult. My decisions don't require anyone's approval, Rowan Harrow retorted, her voice firm. He softened his tone, trying a different tack. Rowan, anyone can see he's just after your money. Rowan's response was sharp, calm. I may be blind, but I'm not stupid. If he weren't after my money, what else could he possibly be after? My blindness. The living room fell silent, the only sound the furious rasp of his knuckles as he clenched his fists. He finally deflated a sigh, escaping, "You're angry at me." Rowan's voice was flat. "Cousin, you really think you're that important?" I sat there squirming, keeping my mouth shut the entire time. Then, in an instant, his gaze snapped to me. "It's all you." He lunged before the words fully left his mouth. We tumbled into a furious tangle. He was younger, stronger, but I landed a few solid punches. He ended up gasping on the floor, winded. Rowan's voice exploded then. Get out of my house!" I flashed a triumphant grin down at him. He scrambled up, head bowed, his lips moving as if to speak, but no words came out. He just shut his mouth, slinking away like a whipped dog driven from its territory. "You should go back first. I need to be alone." Rowan's voice was carefully leveled, her emotions suppressed. "Remember your medicine?" I said, watching her expression, leaving the reminder hanging in the air. Outside, I shoved my hands into my pockets. My fingers brushed against a small, hard wad. Pulling it out, I found a neatly folded slip of paper. During the scuffle with the so-called cousin, he'd quietly slipped something into my pocket. The note's message was blunt. "Don't believe what Rowan says. I'm not her cousin. Please find me." Below it, an unfamiliar phone number. I lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, the smoke burning my lungs. I coughed a harsh, ragged sound. Damn, I'd been tougher than I thought. That kid was vicious, his blows had really stung. When I saw the cousin, again he'd changed into clean clothes, rubbing the side of his face I'd swollen. He managed a lopsided grin. "Just call me Liam Ford." "Sorry about that, Liam." He waved a no need. "I didn't go easy on you either." I cleared my throat, then lifted my eyes, a faint smile on my lips. "You said you weren't her cousin." Liam nodded. "That's right, I'm just a friend from her orphanage." My mind reeled. Then who is her cousin? "She doesn't have one." His voice was eerily calm. "As far as I know, she hasn't had any relatives for a long time." A loud buzz exploded in my ears. But Rowan Harrow told me herself that she was living with her mother 3 years ago. And after her mother died, her relatives fought over her guardianship. So it was all a lie. Why would she deceive me? Liam lowered his eyes. "It's not intentional. She can't distinguish reality herself. She has delusions." Liam's story was heavy with memory. "I've loved Rowan since we were kids. I know nothing about her life before she came to the orphanage. She never spoke of it, and the teachers forbade us from asking. She was always so solitary. I tried everything to get her to play, but she acted like I was invisible. It was a long time before she'd even let me read her storybooks. I knew she liked cats, so I'd chase those grumpy tabbies all over the yard just so she could touch a paw. They'd scratch my arms raw, but once they were near her, they'd turn into little purring fluff balls." Rowan rarely smiled. Only when she was petting a cat would her lips subtly curl up. For that smile, I endured a lot back then. When she was 16, she insisted on leaving the orphanage. I swallowed my pride and followed her out. I knew she didn't really care for me that way, but a 16-year-old girl with poor eyesight. What would she do without me? She had some money her mother left her, but I understood. This world shows no mercy to the vulnerable. That money would only attract greed and danger. At first, she called me cousin. I just figured it was a way to avoid suspicion, so I went along with it. I never imagined that title would slowly become her reality, that she'd actually start believing I was her cousin. The doctor later told me she had severe delusions, not just depression. I couldn't just tell her the truth. It might make her completely break down. So, I went along with her fantasy, living in her world. Her mother had died 3 years ago, and I was the cousin with an inappropriate affection for her. I truly care for her, and I want to look after her, but not in the way she imagines. I'm telling you this because I hope you'll have a change of heart. For her sake and for mine, please leave. I swear, I never touched her medication. I listened to his story, my gaze fixed on him, laced with doubt. Liam grew flustered, his voice urgent. "I know Rowan signed a contract with you. How much did she pay you? I'll match it." I couldn't help a small laugh. "You don't exactly look like a rich man." He scratched his head awkwardly. "It might take some time, but I will pay, as long as you promise to leave her." I leaned back in the chair, taking my time. "You both have your own versions of the story. How can I be sure who to believe?" Liam fell silent for a long moment, then his eyes suddenly lit up. "The doctor, she has a regular psychologist, Dr. Lara Vance. Go to her, she can prove Rowan really has delusions." I nodded. "All right, I believe you." His expression was momentarily startled. Thank you." But I continued, "But I won't be leaving Rowan. Young men like Liam, they're so easily manipulated by emotion. And once they've been hurt by it, they become even more susceptible to persuasion." I easily convinced him that a little distance can be good for love. A period of separation wouldn't hurt either him or Rowan. I even promised him that when he returned, if they both agreed, I'd terminate the contract and return Rowan to him. What I didn't tell Liam was that his departure was equally crucial for me. This empty space of time was exactly what I needed to sculpt the wood in my hands into a sturdy boat. Once that boat was in the water, I could simply drift downstream, straight to my destination. Yes, I believed Liam hadn't touched Rowan's medication, because I had. After seeing Liam off, I went straight to the psychology clinic in South City. Pushing open the door, my eyes immediately landed on the woman in the beige dress. She was in her 30s, smiling as she came to greet me. I bent down and wrapped my arms around her. This was Rowan Harrow's psychologist, Dr. Laura Vance. "I thought you wouldn't come," she said, her eyebrows slightly raised, a playful whine in her tone. "Why wouldn't I? We had our meeting scheduled for today." "New love interest beats old, right?" she sighed dramatically. I leaned in and pecked her lips. "No little girl compares to you." Dr. Vance's eyes sparkled with laughter, 2 spots of crimson rising on her cheeks. I released her, settling into the sofa. "All right, we need to talk about Rowan." Dr. Vance and I had been partners in this game for 10 years. Our prey was always chosen from her patients. The most suitable one is isolated single women, especially those with fragile mental states. Love was the bait, marriage the snare. Once they fell into our net, their money naturally flowed to me. And after they met their accidental demise, as their spouse, I'd be the sole primary heir. Rowan Harrow was practically a born target and orphan, wealthy, blind, depressed, housebound, delusional. To plausibly enter her life, I'd paved an entire road. First, I commissioned an app called Aperture, designed for the visually impaired. Then, Dr. Vance, in her role as a doctor, instilled in Rowan the idea that contact with strangers is beneficial for recovery, while subtly suggesting that not everyone around you can be trusted. Next, Dr. Vance introduced Aperture to her, and I quietly swapped her olanzapine for phenytoin. In this app, she was the only blind person, I was the only volunteer. Every time she reached out for help, the call would inevitably connect to me. I waited 2 agonizing months, nearly reaching the edge of boredom, before she finally made her first request for help. The original plan was to slowly wear down her defenses over time, naturally evolving into her lover. Given her 19 years and innocence, this wouldn't have been difficult. Unexpectedly, she proposed a fake marriage herself. That saved me a lot of trouble. As for the will, that was just a small, easily resolved issue. Dr. Vance wrapped her arms around my neck, her warm breath caressing my ear. "Want me to give her a stronger dose?" I pondered for a moment, then shook my head. Haste makes waste. If we're going to make a move, it has to wait until she's 20 and legally married to me. True. Rowan never had a father growing up, so she has a bit of a father complex. That makes her an easier target for you. Dr. Vance's words brought a smile to my face. Over the next month, I catered to Rowan's every whim, cooking different dishes to lift her spirits. I wove the tale of my life, a carefully embellished version, of course. In this story, I, too, had a tragic past with only a grandmother. Apart from her, I was an orphan, just like Rowan. But unlike her, I'd overcome fate's shackles with optimism and resilience, building a normal life. The contrast was stark, leading to one inescapable conclusion. I could be her light. Liam's mistake was becoming her shadow. But no one falls in love with a shadow. People only love the sun that warms them. I meticulously crafted a father role around her. I insisted she wear socks indoors, no bare feet on the floor. Medications were on a strict schedule. Curtains always open by day, lights on at night she couldn't see. But I wanted her feel the world's embrace. Rain or shine, we walked in the park for 30 minutes, just listening to the wind and rain. In this mundane rhythm, I seeded habits and rituals into her life. When she occasionally defied me, I'd feign sternness, my reproaches laced with fox concern. Slowly, steadily, her dependence on me tightened its grip. Dr. Laura Vance subtly and not so subtly encouraged the idea that romance would benefit her condition. Already hazy on reality, Rowan Harrow began to accept me, her supposed fiancé, as increasingly real. Step 1, complete. Then, I vanished from her life like a phantom. 7 excruciating days. No calls answered, no texts returned. It was as if I'd genuinely evaporated. When I reappeared before Rowan a week later, I knew my absence had worked. She looked utterly lost, her soul scattered by an unseen storm. Her hair was greasy, matted into ropes, clearly unwashed for days. Her face, a ghostly white, was shrouded in a heavy, mildewed aura of despair. Where were you? Her lips were pressed thin, her voice brittle. My eyes fell, a measured apology coloring my tone. My grandmother passed away. Now I'm completely alone. The fire in her eyes extinguished instantly. After a few hesitant seconds, she threw her arms around me, clinging tight. I stroked her matted hair. Come on. I'll make you something to eat. Her shoulders quivered slightly, a suppressed sob escaping. Half the battle I knew was already won. She whispered, I want to walk in the park. All right. The park air was damp and chilly. We'd barely walked a few steps when we bumped into Liam Ford. For over a month, he'd been absent. His eyes now dull, his face etched with exhaustion. I was about to speak, but Rowan cut me off. "I want to talk to my cousin alone." I glanced at Liam. "I'll wait in the gazebo over there. Call me when you're done." "Okay." An hour dragged by. From a distance, I watched their expressions shift and surge. Liam went from despondent to agitated, then from agitated to raw anger. Several times, he pointed at me, cursing, before glaring at me for a full 2 minutes, his face a mask of disappointment and fury, then turning and walking away. I felt a surge of satisfaction. This meant their connection was severed. Rowan would now rely solely on me. But I'm inherently cautious. No variables could be tolerated at this stage. He had to vanish from our lives completely. "Rowan, let's go on a trip." She hesitated for a second. "Alright." Travel is a potent catalyst for intensifying relationships. Unfamiliar surroundings often trick people into mistaking novelty for genuine affection. We settled on a destination, Blindstone Isle. It was her choice, a place she'd lived in as a child, a second home she hadn't seen in years, a longing to revisit. I didn't care where we went, only that it was far from Liam. During our preparations, Liam didn't reappear. Whatever he'd said to her must have wounded him deeply. Young men's pride often makes them hide away when hurt. The day before we were set to leave, Rowan suddenly changed her mind. "Caleb, let's get married." I paused, momentarily taken aback. "We are going to get married, the contract states it, but not until you're 20. She clutched me almost hysterically. "Forget the contract. Let's do it right away. We'll have the wedding on Blindstone Isle, then register it when I turn 20. Please?" I narrowed my eyes. Though it was ahead of schedule, it ultimately worked in my favor. A wedding for 2 orphans would naturally be as simple as could be a mere formality, a quick meal, and it would be done. Her other reason for insisting on Blindstone Isle was that her mother's grave was there. I hadn't invited anyone. She said she wanted to invite Dr. Lara Vance, kindest psychiatrist she knew. I knew Dr. Vance would rather not be seen at such an event, but I didn't object. The wedding arrangements were hers. Despite the underlying theme of simplicity, most girls harbor a secret wedding dream. I saw no need to burst her bubble. The wedding day finally arrived. To my surprise, Rowan had set up the ceremony on the mountain right beside her mother's grave. Looking around, the setup felt less like a wedding and more like a funeral parlor. I mused that with her condition. Perhaps she wanted her mother to witness her marriage. Besides, weddings and funerals share some similarities in their arrangements, so I saw no need to press. I was convinced she was completely under my control. The attendees were all elders, their faces expressionless, their eyes clouded, slowly taking their seats. Oddly, though it wasn't raining, every single one wore a raincoat. Suddenly, every head in the crowd turned in unison. I followed their gaze, and a prickle of unease ran down my spine. It was Rowan. Dressed in mourning white, she walked towards me. I was about to speak when a thunderous blow slammed into the back of my head. As my vision blurred, old man Celis's figure swam into view, a wooden club in his hand. He spat forcefully onto the ground. When I next opened my eyes, Dr. Vance and I were bound. Rowan stood before me, her expression as cold as frozen seawater. "Caleb, after today, my mother's blind D will finally have a name carved on it. In fact, I should call you my stepfather." "What do you mean?" "Rowan, can you untie us first? I'm sure there's a misunderstanding here." "Don't worry." Her voice was like a blade. "I'll make sure you die knowing exactly why." Her narrative began to unfold slowly. "I have depression, but I've never had delusions. I can tell reality from falsehood. So, what happened to my mother, I could never forget. I was born never knowing my father. My mother raised me alone on Blindstone Isle for a few years. The grandpas and grandmas on the island treated us like family. It wasn't until I was old enough to understand that I learned my mother also grew up on this island. Her parents died young. In many ways, my mother and I were cast from the same mold. My mother grew up eating everyone's food on the island. This place is remote. Young people leave to make a living as soon as they're adults, and over time, only the elders remain. They love children. My mother called herself the island chief, and every visit to a neighbor's house brought back a pocketful of snacks. She never forgot these kindnesses and made a habit of talking to them, listening to their decades-old stories repeated over and over. As she grew up, she helped whenever anyone had a problem. If an elder was abandoned by their children, she stepped forward. These elders treated her like their own daughter, and she always respected the island's elders as if they were her own parents. Later, she married and gave birth to me, but fate was cruel. I was born blind, and my father died young. She had to bear the heavy burden of life alone. To cure my eyes, my mother packed her bags and went to the city. She was born with a paintbrush in her hand, a natural talent for art. She saved money by painting, traveling with me to hospitals across the country. But each glimmer of hope eventually turned to disappointment. My eyes never saw the light. Her stress, little by little, surged like a tide, until it completely swallowed her. Depression quietly took root. She became a frequent visitor to Dr. Vance's office. My brain roared, a thunderclap splitting through the silence. Over a decade of forgotten memories surged, drowning me. Back then, fresh in the game, Iris Harrow had been my first mark. So many victims had followed over the years that I'd selectively forgotten her, but now her face was vivid, consuming my every thought. I remembered, too, that she'd had a blind daughter. My gaze drifted to the unmarked tombstone nearby. An icy chill crawled up my spine. Beside me, Dr. Lara Vance was a weeping mess, utterly terrified. Rowan Harrow's voice was as flat as ice. My mother died. Of course you couldn't adopt me. So, you sent me to an orphanage. I'm sorry, my throat tightened. She shook her head, her voice chillingly steady. After leaving the orphanage, it took me a long time to find Dr. Vance, then to get myself accepted as her patient. I was playing a long game, waiting for you to pick me. I knew you only targeted wealthy women. I had no money, but I had grandparents for you. That $500,000 deposit. It was years of savings, pieced together by the elders on this island. I scanned the faces around me. The old men and women stared, their eyes cold as lions, utterly devoid of emotion. A slight smile touched her lips. I knew, of course, that Dr. Vance had quietly switched my medication. My entire body nearly lurched at that revelation. Because I knew you'd finally taken the bait. She recommended the Aperture app, and I was puzzled at first. But the moment I heard your voice on the phone, I understood. The time was right. Caleb Cross, right? Do you remember that name? You killed my mother. By the island's rules, if someone is murdered and their revenge isn't taken, their tombstone cannot bear a name. A tombstone without a name is like a person without eyes. We call it a blind tombstone. A Caleb, she continued, you can't let my mother spend eternity without her name, like I've spent my life without my sight, can I? After she finished, everything clicked into place. What about Liam Ford? Her brow furrowed slightly. He had nothing to do with this. When I found out he'd secretly met you, I did panic. That's why the second time he came, I used every ounce of strength to drive him away. That was the time you saw in the pavilion. I remembered Liam's eyes that day. So, he was just a fool, willing to walk through fire for love. Clinging to a desperate hope, I pleaded, my voice cracking, Rowan, let's talk. Turn me over to the police, please. Let the law judge me. If you kill me, you'll go to jail too. She merely shook her head, her voice flat. You didn't kill my mother with your own hands. Hand it to the police, you wouldn't die. I grasped at the straw like a drowning man. Exactly. I didn't directly cause her death. It was an accident. She nodded. Yes. Which is why I don't intend to kill you with my own hands either. A wave of relief washed over me. Perfect. As long as you don't kill me, any punishment will do. But then she smiled. I only said I wouldn't kill you. But the grandparents on the island love me, yet they don't agree with everything I say. Their feelings for my mother run deeper than their feelings for me. I can't persuade them. I froze, not understanding, my gaze instinctively sweeping around. The elders' faces seemed to awaken in an instant, their previously dull eyes lighting up, like kindling catching fire in the wind. Old man Salas, I noticed, had somehow produced a sharp butcher's knife and was slowly advancing on Dr. Lara Vance. Dr. Vance was already pale with terror, screaming hysterically, "Help me! I was wrong! Help me!" Her desperate cries hadn't even faded before an old man, 70 or 80 years old, raised his hand and plunged a knife into her. The blade sliced cleanly into her abdomen. Her pupils trembled violently. She couldn't even finish her sentence before a second knife struck, wielded by an old woman with a head full of silver hair. Then a third, a fourth. The blades fell again, and again until she could no longer make a sound. Blood gushed in torrents as the knives were withdrawn, splattering like crimson rain against their raincoats, running down the fabric and soaking into the soft, wet earth. In that moment, I understood why all these elders wore raincoats. The meaning of death tightened around my throat like a noose, knot by knot. I forced myself to calm down. This was my only way out. Wait, I have money. I can buy my life. Rowan's brows knitted tightly. I don't want money. I want you dead. The elders were closing in, step by agonizing step. My palms were slick with cold sweat, but my hands moved faster than ever. I'd been grinding a rock against the ropes binding me since this whole conversation began. Just break. Just get free. This was just a bunch of old people and a blind girl. I'd have a chance to escape, even to fight back. As old man Silas raised the blood-stained butcher's knife, my ankle suddenly felt light. The rope finally snapped. I burst forward like a wild animal, tackling old man Silas to the ground, using his body as a spring to launch myself forward. The elders were thrown into disarray by the suddenness of my move. I cackled, twisting back. Haha, you killed Dr. Vance? If I escape, none of you will live. Immunity, you'll all rot in jail until you die. Rowan's voice, however, was calm. The next boat doesn't come for 3 days. I froze, the panic in my eyes slowly replaced by a building ferocity. Then I'll just have to claim self-defense. Killing wasn't new to me, it was something I'd done on my long road of deception. I fixated on an old woman clutching a cleaver, intending to snatch it, when suddenly, a fleeting shadow darted into my peripheral vision. That speed. No one on this island should be able to move like that. Still stunned, a cold, pointed blade pierced my ribs. I looked down at that young face. It was Liam Ford. My body swayed, then I collapsed to the ground. The surrounding elders immediately closed in, their hands beneath their raincoats now holding knives. The cold glint of steel flashed before my eyes again and again. Rowan. No, Rowan. Liam's voice trembled slightly. Forgive me for following you. I couldn't let you go. After a brief silence, Rowan sighed. So be it. He walked towards me. Old man Silas handed him the knife, guiding his hand directly to my heart. He bent down, whispering in my ear now, I forgive you? The words had barely left his lips before the knife point brutally tore through my chest. In the conference room on Blindstone Isle, the air hung heavy. Rowan Harrow broke the silence first. I'll turn myself in. No nonsense? All us old folks on the island disagree? The first no was Liam, the rest a chorus from the elders. Old man Silas stepped forward, leaning on his cane. Rowan was just visiting family. We've never seen any Caleb Cross or Dr. Lara Vance. Never even heard of them in our lives. Rowan shook her head. It'll never stay hidden. Old man Silas raised a hand to stop her. You said they have no family, no victims seeking justice. Drag this case out for as long as possible. 3 to 5 years, ideally until all us old bones are resting in the earth. I don't have many years left to live anyway. Listen up, except for you and Liam, everyone else go write your wills. Right, I'm the one who did the killing. Whoever dies first takes the fall. Understand. The elders murmured their agreement. Understood. Good. What if I can't write? I'll write it, you just put your handprint on it. Rowan listened, tears finally welling in her eyes. What about your reputations? Old man Silas scoffed, his white hair a stark contrast to his fierce gaze. When a man's dead, he's dead. I've lived over 80 years, even killed men before. What's reputation worth then? On the hillside of Blindstone Isle, the salty sea breeze drifted softly. Rowan stood before her mother's grave. Deep iron scratches now marked the previously blank tombstone. Tom of beloved mother Iris Harrow. Erected by dutiful daughter, Rowan Harrow. Liam opened his mouth to ask something, but said nothing, just lowered his head. The tranquil breeze ruffled her hair. I like you too? Rowan whispered.